Hello, everybody. It's Dave Neal, stand-up comic and host of Bachelor Nation News. We've got Nick Viall back in the news. Look, I'm going to share with you his formula for what he's doing right now to keep on staying in the news. I believe it's toxic, unneeded, and kind of unhinged, to be quite honest. He's continuing to bully Gerry Turner here. Nick shades Golden Bachelor Gerry Turner, hopes new wife Teresa asked for a prenup. This after kind of talking about Gerry Turner and moving on too quickly because his wife's body wasn't cold yet, crazy stuff. No one should ever talk about someone's late wife or late husband that way, especially someone who is a peer. Nick and Gerry are peers. They were both stars of the same TV show. It's absolutely unhinged. And the saddest part, I wonder if Nick is maybe like, of that style brain where he doesn't know some of the things he's saying. We all have those friends, right? But actually, as we're about to see, it's actually pretty scripted. Follow me on Instagram at DNeals. And then Bachelor Rush Hour, the morning and afternoon podcast. I'll be live in about an hour, about 11:45, maybe 12 p.m. Central Time. Let's do 12 p.m. Central Time. So that's 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. East Coast, and we'll do the afternoon rush hour. So it all starts with this. He interviews with these Page Six people as a way to promote his new Mucinex sponsorship. I guess, I don't know how that works. We're calling him Nasal Nick. Old Mr. Mucus himself flicks a booger at Gerry. That's what we're calling. You say spills tea, I say flick a booger. So I'm going to share this. Let's start right here, and then we're going to educate anyone who's new to this very strange, very bizarre beef. And you might say, Dave, you've got an axe to grind against Nick. No, I'm just calling it as I see it. If Justin Glaze were the person that was continuing to be very toxic and weaponizing things, I would call him out. But it seems really that Nick's the only person in Bachelor Nation doing this. And as he lays out for us shortly, you're going to see he knows exactly what he's doing. Have a listen.
Last time we chatted with you, you shared your take on the Golden Bachelor controversy. He has since gotten married. I don't know if you had any.
I feel like I made some news with you guys. Yeah.
Small talk. I feel like I made some news with you guys.
do you have any hot takes on the Golden Bachelor?
And then they're going to get to their next hot take, which I'm going to share. But when he says, I feel like I made some news with you guys, he's referencing this interview right here.
And I think, so sometimes that is the fault of the show. This kind of narrative and it's the first Golden Bachelor. There were a lot of widow and widowers, Gerry being a widower and a lot of widows on the show. Obviously that pulls in the heartstrings. Bachelor is often known for their sad, sappy stories on these dates. So it's kind of their playbook. So Gerry was going to lean into that, so to speak. On the flip side, it is tough to watch an entire season of Gerry selling this narrative that all he's been doing since the passing of his wife was cry, play pickleball, and occasionally having like this weird one-on-one moment with some hand lotion.
So I'm going to pause there. So Nick mentions, and the bad part hasn't come yet, he's already mentioned that he understands the show oversimplifies things. And then he also says all of the things they oversimplify, like he knows it's more than that. So why is he going to blame the cast member, being Gerry Turner, for the editing and the sort of creative direction that the show wants it to go in? Don't blame Gerry for any of that. He's a human. Yeah, sure, it might have been more fun if they had a longer season where they could have shared more aspects of Gerry, but his heartbreak doesn't mean he can't play pickleball. His heartbreak, you can be more multidimensional. Go on a rant there, but what we're seeing is him discuss Gerry's late wife in ways you should never talk about someone's late partner or you shouldn't talk about anyone this way. You shouldn't weaponize this ever.
And in reality, we've come to find out that the body was barely cold.
It is full of garbage.
So Nick says the body was barely cold. And some people have said, well, he wasn't lying. And my response to that is, it's a fucking figure of speech. The body was barely cold. Okay? You don't actually say that about someone's, deceased partner. So this is sort of the what is it called, etymology of it all. Someone has died, and people start criticizing that person who's died, right? So if President Trump were to die tomorrow, you wouldn't criticize them. You wouldn't speak ill of the dead, whether it's someone you like or don't like. That's like the common etiquette. The body was barely cold. Why are they even wait for the body to be cold before you criticize them? Whereas Nick uses that in a completely different way to say the body was barely cold. Why are you moving on with somebody else? Hey, Nick, you don't get to be the person who decides the temperature of his deceased widow. Are you kidding me? It's inappropriate to do so close to the death. That's what this means. In the Latin epigram is de mortuis nihil nisi bonum, meaning about the dead, nothing if not good. About the dead, do not speak, especially if it's not good. Only speak positively about the dead. They can't defend themselves. He doesn't even do this. He speaks about the dead here. The body was barely cold in a way to slam Gerry for moving on. That's why it's so offensive. And some people might not ever get this. Oh, Dave's just got an axe to grind. This is the cross-examining of Nick's weaponization of some real sensitive shit right here. The high road in which Gerry drives is impressive for him to not comment on this. But I would be remiss if I didn't analyze these words to say, oh, ha, 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 how funny of it. We generated some press, and when he generates that press, he shares with his new ad campaigns, hey, Mr. Mucus, we get all of these views, and it's like, yeah, but at what cost? But at what cost? He shares his strategy with us in plain sight. Have a listen.
You just have to figure out how to bring drama to your show.
Interesting.
I don't care where
how
it comes
you do
from.
it, but it's got to come.
It's just got to, people watch, it's got to be entertaining.
So Nick says you just have to figure out how to bring drama to your show. I don't care where it comes from. Nick doesn't care about people, especially his coworkers like Gerry. Yeah, I've got no beef with Nick, but you got to know that this is where it's at. So if I were to say, lay this all out, if Nick were to be like, and this will never happen, but if he were to be like, Dave, come on my show and explain to me why you have these beefs, I would say, why did you feel the need to knock the UCAN Foundation? Why did you feel the need to knock Katie Thurston and Blake Horstman when you did the same exact thing, which was expose their text messages and speak on that hypocrisy? Why did you feel the need to delete my name because you don't want to give credit to content creators you feel like you're better than? Or is it an insecurity thing? Because I would respect Nick a little bit more if he said, you know what, it's an insecurity thing. I don't want people to Google you. You're good at what you do. And I feel like if they Google your name, they're going to take time away from me. I don't think that's the right thing to do, but I would appreciate if he shares it. And finally, why do you feel the need to drag other people for your own benefit? There is collateral damage here. And that is Gerry Turner has a dad, has kids, has grandkids. And these articles come out about his dead a wife and her body not being cold enough, as if Nick's a purveyor of temperature of the body before you're allowed to move on. This is crazy stuff. And he admits it right here. Hey, find a way to make drama. But at what cost? And I had to share all of that, the first, X amount, 8 minutes, to get to the actual news stuff. But you have to know, it's just I'm not some crazy person here who's saying, oh, well, we don't like this person because they get more downloads than us. That's fucking wrong. It's wrong the way that he's getting some of these. You don't need that, is my point. Go do your interviews. Do the Gypsy Rose interviews. Do the breaking news stories. Those are all fine. You don't need to double down and say, hey, no such thing as a bad. No, there is such thing as bad. And what you're doing here in these specific instances is completely against the platform you say you want to have. Well, you want to be a therapist, and then yet you're wedging yourself in between, I'm sorry, it's disgusting. It's not ethical.
Wedding, what were the hits? What were the misses?
Here's the new stuff.
I was preparing for the Gypsy Rose interview the night of the wedding, so I did not get to watch.
You didn't miss much.
Yeah.
Well, I disagree. The Golden Wedding was a fantastic event where all the alumni got together. It was totally fun. Now, my guess is he wasn't there because Gerry Turner said, "Don't come near my wedding if you're going to talk about me and my late wife that way." That's my guess.
But I wish him nothing but nothing but the best.
By the way, Nick also does this thing when he's being interviewed. He did the same. I hate to say it. He did the same thing here in this interview. He does this thing where he sort of, I don't know if it's a power move or like neuro-linguistic programming. I don't really know what it is, but he does this thing where he'll like stretch and look in the other direction. He makes it look like he's like, people are grateful to have his time. He does this thing here where, and again, it could just be like he gets these tics, but I don't see him doing this when he's on his own show. I see him being way more engaging on his own show. But when he's doing these interviews, he's just looking away, and he does this thing where he's like stretches his leg in a weird way. He would never do that on Entertainment Tonight or something that's of a proper, a medium here. But you find that he does it on these interviews, and it just feels like it's his way of saying like, oh, like I'm better than this. Like, thank you for having me here. Either way, he did it with Jason's interview. He also did it on this one. He literally starts stretching his leg at one point. And it's like, you're on camera, right? You don't owe them anything. What's going on? All right. Anyway, let's continue. So he's looking out the window. Maybe there's a bird's feeder. Who knows?
It opens up a lot of questions.
Excuse me. Hold on. Sorry. Go back here. We're back.
Yeah. And was there a prenup conversation that?
Do you think there should have been a prenup conversation? I feel like for Teresa, there should have been a prenup conversation if we know what we know about Mr. Gerry.
Mm-hmm. I think it was more than okay for Teresa to request one if she did.
Okay, so what makes you say that?
And of course, this is the idea that Gerry only chose her for her money. I mean, the guy who's retired on fixed income just becomes the Bachelor. He's going to have his own lucrative opportunities. I reject the idea that he's just doing it for her money. Why would, I mean, you know what I mean? It's not like she's a billionaire who's 108 years old. They're roughly the same age. I don't think he's after her money, but the idea about it, he almost weaponizes the idea about prenups. Whereas right over here, as we're seeing, and again, sorry for cutting back and forth, but in order to follow along, right here, he speaks highly of prenups because he got one.
BFY, do you have a take on prenups?
Yeah, I think they're great. Or I think they're
okay.
totally
So you're
fine.
pro prenup then?
Yeah, I mean, like marriage nowadays, it's not what it used to be.
No.
And again, prenup with the idea that the assets you come into the marriage are your assets.
Yep.
And things that you do together as a couple can be And
so when describing a prenup in his own instance, he makes a pretty good response. Yeah, hey, protect your assets beforehand. But when he does it here, he says, knowing what we know, he should be. What in the mean girl bullshit is this?
Because if it's about love, it really isn't about anything else, right? So, yeah, it would be weird for him to decline the request, wouldn't it?
That's true. That is true. Okay. Well,
isn't he a successful restaurantpreneur or whatever it's called? Why does he need the?
How dismissive? I mean, first of all, you're getting these real petty reactions. No offense, but it's like, oh my gosh, how dismissive. It's all a conditional stuff. They don't even know whether or not there was a prenup, and they're saying he really should take one, shouldn't he? I mean, he's a successful entrepreneur. I mean, that's a restaurateur. That's a title that The Bachelor gave him. He owned a burger joint, you know what I mean? And he sold it. So it's not like he was some big ballin' guy. The mischaracterization by Nick, what grudge does he have? And again, we didn't even cover the fact that Nick's channel was the one who released this completely unvetted story that Gerry was this monster cheating on his late wife. I mean, what? Who? Hey, Nick, tell us, please. How did Gerry hurt you? And can we crowdfund some therapy here? What did he decline a request for an interview? Like, what gives?
Why does he need a
No, that's a good question to ask. Maybe you can get Teresa on the Viall Files and
or
see
her accountant. I'd actually rather you.
By the way, so the guy on the left is Gaston, and the guy on the right is LeFou. He just kind of laughs at Gaston. How bizarre. I don't know what to say, guys. They want to get Teresa's accountant. Obviously, they're kidding, but what does this have to do with anything? You know what I mean? And they go on, and there they have it, and they probably, you know, they link to the previous story here, so they keep on sharing the previous story. Like, they don't care. It gets them clicks. Who cares? But this is what I'm talking about. Nick, this is how it works, right? Nick agrees to the interview if they include this part of it. So it's kind of like Page 6 is in cahoots with Nick, who's in cahoots with Mucinix, and then he becomes the snot guy, takes a photo with Mr. Mucinix, who essentially is a giant booger. And somehow these clicks lead to more ad money because he gets to show Mucinix that he's making this extra money. There's literally no other reason for him to go on with Page 6 other than as part of a PR campaign to fluff his impressions with Mucinix. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but you see this literally from a mile away. And I would have no problem with it if it wasn't, using Gary Turner's late wife as fodder for him to make money from a Nasal company. What can you do? That's Nasal Nick. If you enjoy my content, please join me on Patreon at patreon.com/Dave Neal. We'll talk to you later.